Hey, stranger things have happened, and this is one of the strange ones, and I'm glad it worked out for the Utah Jazz.
Hakeem's action against Billy Pulse.
Hakeem Olajuwon tried to punch who? Make sure to watch until the end to find that out. Hakeem Olajuwon, otherwise known as The Dream during his time in the NBA, is still known for his legendary play on the court and will most likely forever be etched into the Houston Rockets Hall of Fame. Many people knew him for his calm demeanor on the court, as he'd always just stay quiet and calm while completely dominating your favorite team. However, there were times that other players decided to push him over the edge, sparking a few fights throughout his long career. And believe me, some of these were not very pretty, and even included a few punches being thrown. In today's video, we've gathered 5 of the best fights involving Hakeem Olajuwon to show you all. And make sure you guys stick around until the end of the video, because the number 1 fight on our list is absolutely insane and could have been 10 times worse. Let's not waste any time and jump right in with number 5. Here at number 5, we've got a fight that was fairly tame compared to some of the other fights we've got coming up, so make sure to stick around until the end of the video so that you don't miss any of those. For now, we'll be going over the altercation with Hakeem and Anthony Mason. Hakeem was working to back down Mason in the post when he turned and accidentally clipped Mason in the face with his elbow. Anthony fell hard onto the ground and sprinted up to bump into the back of Hakeem, who was facing the other direction and trying to walk away. A ton of people swarmed into the frame to pull Mason away from the Dream, who was simply walking away from the confrontation to avoid making matters worse. However, Mason broke free of his restraints and bumped into Hakeem once more, only this time it was chest to chest. They stared each other down and exchanged a few words before once again they were broken up. Mason looked furious after he was pulled to the side, and one can imagine it was because they gave him a technical foul, but not Hakeem. Houston got to shoot a free throw and maintained possession, while Mason was sitting over on the sidelines just steaming because he felt he was wrongly hit in the face intentionally. Now, to top it all off, it happened to come right in the middle of the 1994 NBA Finals, so you know intensity was already at an all-time high, and emotions were flowing throughout the entire arena. So it could just be one little thing that completely sets off the entire place, just like an elbow to the face. Moving on to number 4 on our list comes the fight between Hakeem and Billy Pulse. This fight is probably the most random and questionable of his entire career, because there doesn't seem to be any prior indication as to why the whole thing started in the first place. Hakeem Olajuwon was still in his rookie year with the Houston Rockets, and the team was right in the middle of Game 5 against the Utah Jazz. Hakeem and his matchup backup center Billy Pulse were standing in the paint preparing for the upcoming possession. Hakeem doesn't look to be in much of a prepared stance like Pulse was, and it showed when he cocked his arm back and full-on slapped Pulse right in the face. Clearly, Pulse was surprised by the hit and stumbled backwards, while Hakeem carried on like nothing happened. There had to have been some kind of trash talk shared between these two guys leading up to the slap, because it's so rare for a guy with talent like Hakeem's to just randomly hit somebody in the face for no reason whatsoever. However, that seems to be the case in this particular fight, though we're probably lucky that Pulse was so stunned that he wasn't able to return fire, because if these two guys decided to get into it, we could have been in for a load of trouble. I'm sure the league wouldn't have been too happy to have to sort through the incident and hand out punishments either, because they already had their hands pretty full at this time. Heading into number 3, we have Hakeem Olajuwon against Maurice Lucas. It was during a game in the 1987 NBA playoffs and actually didn't even start with Hakeem. His partner in crime in Houston, Ralph Sampson, was actually the one Lucas was going after when the fight first broke out. Sampson and Lucas got into it during a play, and the referees blew the whistle to stop the action pretty quickly. It didn't stop each of them, though, from trying to shove the other one. Hakeem ran in to pull Lucas away from the action and try to restore peace, but Lucas wasn't having any of it. Instead, he shoved Hakeem backwards and screamed at him, causing Olajuwon to try to charge back at him in retaliation. Another Rockets player was able to get Hakeem out of the growing pile before anything could happen, but somehow both Lucas and Hakeem met back up a few feet to the right of the pile and continued their scuffle. The trash talk began to intensify as you could see them both yelling at one another despite being pulled pretty far apart. Hakeem tried to convince the coaches that he was calm and relaxed while being pulled away, but everybody knew that the second he was able to be let go, he'd go right back at Lucas if given the chance. Meanwhile, Sampson walked away from the pile the second that Hakeem pulled Lucas backwards. Throughout the entire fight, you could literally see Sampson standing a little bit away from the ensuing fight, and he was just standing there relaxing. This man clearly wanted to be part of whatever was going down, and that was obvious. Either way, it wasn't a terrible fight, but was more than enough to be placed on this list due to the shoves and arguing that Hakeem and Lucas shared in just a few minutes of time. It was nowhere near as bad as these upcoming fights though, so stick around to see what the worst fight of his long NBA career was and who it was against. We're now making our way into some of the most interesting fights throughout his career at number 2. This fight happens to come between Hakeem and Antonio McDyess. Now, if any of you have ever gotten the privilege to watch the Dream play basketball, you would know that he was able to keep his composure pretty well, though this time was the complete exception to that rule. It was very late in the fourth quarter, and the Rockets held a huge lead over the Phoenix Suns. Hakeem and McDyess started bumping each other during the possession, and it seemed like they each just wanted positioning on the floor. However, it took a turn when they started slapping each other's arms down during the play, then wrapped each other up. If you weren't paying attention to the game, you might have just thought these two guys were just hugging it out during the play for some random reason. But that was the furthest thing on their minds. McDyess shoved Hakeem backwards, and then Hakeem threw a punch of his own in retaliation. As these things typically go, McDyess then decided to throw a haymaker of his own right back at him, and the two started exchanging punches. I'd say that each guy threw about 3 punches, and thankfully only a few of them landed. It was just a couple seconds before multiple staff members, referees, and other teammates were able to wrap up both McDyess and Olajuwon and get them calmed down. Probably the funniest part of this whole altercation, though, was what happened after they were separated. It honestly seemed like they were completely calmed down, with Hakeem almost looking like he was surprised that a foul was going to be handed to him for the fight. For the most part, when players get into it like that, they pretty much know the punishment that will eventually rain down on them, but here it doesn't even seem like they even gave a thought about that. Now we move on to one of his most memorable fights against Mitch Kupchak. This fight definitely takes the number 1 spot on our list for reasons that will become obvious soon enough. The Houston Rockets had the ball against the Los Angeles Lakers, and Hakeem moved towards the ball handler as if he was going to set a screen. Kupchak was his defender on this play and kind of put both his arms on Hakeem as if he was prepared to fight through an inevitable screen. However, no screen ever ended up happening, and Hakeem slapped Kupchak's arms to get some space for himself, which ignited a fire under Kupchak. He got furious and bumped Hakeem backwards, which is right when a referee desperately tried to get in the middle of them and stop him. It was no use though, as each player started throwing and landing punches at the other. Kupchak actually fell onto the ground after taking one hit, and Hakeem was dragged to the ground himself by 2 people. One was a Lakers teammate who had his arms around his neck, while the other was a referee that basically tackled him. Once they hit the ground, everything just got worse. Because Hakeem was tackled in front of the Lakers bench, everybody started to swarm around him while he was getting up, causing even more shoves and pushes to be thrown in the pile. Cameras couldn't get in to see what else was going on, but they did see another Rockets player start exchanging shoves with another Lakers player on the outside of the pileup. It even looked like some fans had thrown a few things onto the court because security guards sprinted onto the scene to get things cleaned up as best they possibly could. As you can expect, both Hakeem and Kupchak were ejected for their actions on the floor. Hakeem actually looked a little disappointed and slowly walked off, while Kupchak was seen screaming at somebody over the decision, constantly looking back while being escorted into the locker room. Addicted to watching your favorite NBA players involved in fights? Well, you're in luck. Click on the video that appears on your screen now to keep watching more NBA fights. And let us know in the comments below who we should make a video about next.